The murder of Specialist Vanessa Guillen shocked our conscience and brought attention to deeper problems. The initial investigation into Vanessa's death, coupled with high numbers of crimes and deaths at Fort Hood, has revealed a series of missteps and multiple failures in our system and within our leadership.
The Independent Review Board uncovering many instances of unreported sexual assault and harassment.
Breaking news, an arrest in the murder of this Fort Hood soldier. Police say they've captured the man who shot and killed Brandon Rosencrans in May. That suspect now being held on a $1 million bond.
The numbers are high here. They are the highest in most cases for sexual assault and harassment and murders for our entire formation, the U.S. Army.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
I'm Jay.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is an independent podcast covering true crime,
Unsolved mysteries,
Missing people,
urban legends,
and strange places. If you'd like to support our show and get a bunch of extra Paradise After Dark content, go ahead and sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
and be sure to check out our website,
ParadiseAfterDark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived ones, our mailing list, merch store, links to our social medias, and of course, our Patreon.
We also there have a tip jar, so if you just want to help out the show, one quick stop by, drop some change in the tip jar, and we'll give you a shout out on the show. So, Lauren, I think first thing we need to do is wish everyone a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it is 2023. We are back at it hot and heavy.
Yes, and I think the question on everyone's mind is, who is that strange voice they just heard?
What strange voice? There was a strange voice?
Yeah, that soft little strange voice that's never been on this show before.
Maybe a ghost?
No, I think it's Jay.
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 It was Jay. I
Jay's
think I heard
here.
a Jay. Jay's here.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay.
Hi.
Welcome, Jay, to the show. She is going to be joining us on many future episodes, hopefully. Jay is our new friend. Just tell us about yourself, Jay.
I call her Resident Evil.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So kind. I'm Jay. I'm a criminal justice student in college at the moment. Hopefully in future time, I'll be doing forensic studies. Something about me besides that is I have a tattoo. I just got it today. I'm letting everybody know that.
That's exciting business. That's the first tattoo.
The first tattoo is a big deal.
She likes chocolate and long walks on the beach and bubbly.
I actually don't think she likes chocolate, though.
She
I
doesn't.
don't like the beach.
Exactly. Everything I said,
she doesn't.
Everything I said was just totally opposite and wrong. So that's what you get.
Last time Jay joined us at the beach, she was like bitching the whole time.
Yeah, let's go.
I wasn't
home.
bitching.
We live in the most like beautiful beaches in the world, pretty much. And
I don't like the beach.
And she doesn't. She thinks it's a beach.
okay.
Life literally to her is a beach. So, Lauren, you have some news about yourself and Jay. Why don't you tell everyone?
Surprise. Jay and I will be at CrimeCon UK in June of this year. June 10th and 11th in London. You can get your ticket at crimecon.co.uk and use promo code PARADISE for 10% off your ticket.
I think if going to UK would be like an awesome trip, but going there with sort of the knowledge that you're going to be attending CrimeCon in UK would just be like the pinnacle. I mean, that would be pretty awesome.
I know. I'm really excited.
Yeah, that's when we went to Vegas. I've never been to Vegas. I was so excited to go to Vegas, and to be part of CrimeCon was just like, it just put me over the edge. It's awesome. So definitely go to the website, get your tickets, head across the pond. It's a good excuse to go to the UK.
And
You've got plenty of time.
You get to see me, and then you get to meet Jay face to face.
Absolutely. Ken won't be there. Ken will be here holding down the fort, but I guess that's okay. So speaking of forts, Lauren,
Yes.
tonight we are discussing a strange place, which if you find out the location of tonight's place, strange place, everything you need to know is in the name. So, Lauren, you want to elaborate on that?
Well, Fort Hood is a strange place indeed. It is a United States Army post located near Killeen, Texas, about halfway between Austin and Waco. It was founded in January 1942 as the U.S. became involved in World War II as a training ground for tank destroyers selected for its various terrain. The base was built on 109,000 acres of high bluffs, ridges, sharp slopes, and mesa-like hills covered with shrubs, bushes, and small trees. As of 2020, the United States Census, there were 28,295 people, 2,893 households, and 2,720 families residing on Fort Hood. The base was also built on top of an ancient Comanche Native American burial ground, discovered when construction workers unearthed more than 2,200 grave sites in 1998. Could that be the source of the evil that seems to lurk on this military base?
Maybe.
Is it even evil?
Possibly.
Could it just be bad luck?
Mm-hmm.
A curse? Something else? Yeah. Why have so many soldiers stationed at Fort Hood been murdered, gone missing, or committed suicide?
Seven non-commissioned officers responsible for training and welfare of soldiers at Fort Hood came forward in 2020 on the condition of anonymity to The Intercept. In an article written by Melissa Del Bosque, the 5 sergeants and 2 staff sergeants said the environment at Fort Hood had become so dangerous that they fear for the safety of their soldiers. They described a toxic leadership culture at Fort Hood that tolerates rampant drug use, sexual harassment, and misconduct on the base, and in some instances has allowed service members accused of sexual assault to remain within their ranks. Picture that. Allowing that to just get swept under the rug.
I don't need to picture it. I've seen it.
3 of the soldiers said they've witnessed young soldiers in crisis who were ignored by their commanding officers and later attempted suicide. I would be scared to send my kid to Fort Hood, said Sergeant who had served in the Army for nearly a decade. I don't think the leadership here at Fort Hood is doing a good job or any sort of job to protect their soldiers. These anonymous soldiers said they felt compelled to come forward out of concern that no meaningful change will come from the military and congressional investigations launched. The public needs to know what's going on here, said one of the sergeants, because I have no more faith in the federal system or the Army. This came in wake of the murder of 20-year-old Vanessa Guillen, which we will discuss in detail later.
Fort Hood reported 163 deaths since 2016, 73 of them ruled out as suicides, according to Fort Hood's Public Affairs Office.
Sergeant Lawrence George Sprader, Jr. Sprader, age 24, disappeared Friday, June 8, 2007, during the exercise testing basic map reading and navigation skills in a rugged exercise area at the sprawling Central Texas post. His body was found the following Tuesday night, 4 days later, in a brushy area on the post training grounds. He died of hyperthermia and dehydration, according to autopsy results. According to an article from CBS News dated June 13, 2007, officials have said Sprader had 2 canteens of water, a water backpack, and 2 MREs when he left. His body was found near plenty of drinking water from creeks and other sources, said Robert Volk, Fort Hood's chief game warden. 9 other soldiers got lost during the 3-hour exercise, but all except Sprader got back to the rally point safely by following the sound of a siren that blasts when time is up. Why not Sprader? Why did he allow himself to die out there? An investigative report found various missteps by the Academy's leadership. The Academy leaders failed to adequately monitor the heat index before and during the exercise as required by Army policy. It also said leaders did not adequately patrol the course or provide enough water for soldiers, and that disorganization and delays hampered the search. 6 leaders of Fort Hood's Non-Commissioned Officers Academy were disciplined in connection with Sprader's death. Now, Paradise After Dark has a policy of not talking about mass shootings, but for the sake of this episode, it is necessary to give the bare minimum of details. We will not be naming the shooters.
On November 5th, 2009, a mass shooting took place at Fort Hood. An Army major and psychiatrist fatally shot 13 people and injured more than 30 others. It was the deadliest mass shooting on American military base. During this shooting, keep in mind there were men and women of all ranks, ranging from age 19 all the way up to age 62. I mean, we're talking some high-ranking officials from lieutenant colonels, specialists, captains. And in one situation, there was a woman who was 21 years old who was 8 months pregnant, and her baby did not survive. So just to give you some idea of just how horrible this shooting was, I mean, you got people from all over. It was horrible. Now, the shooter was found guilty on 13 counts of premeditated murder and 32 counts of attempted premeditated murder. This was on August 23rd of 2013, and he was sentenced to death August 28th. 2013. So that was a pretty fast turnaround. There was no question as to how he should be charged.
On July 28, 2011, an Army private who was absent without leave was arrested near Fort Hood with a gun and suspicious materials in what local law enforcement officials described as a terror plot to kill other soldiers. After the would-be mass shooter applied for conscientious objector status in the spring of 2010 pending his deployment to Afghanistan, the Army approved of his discharge. The conscientious objector is an individual who has claimed the right to refuse to perform military service on the grounds of freedom of thought, conscience, or religion. While processing him out of the Army, officials found child pornography on his government-issued computer, and in June 2010, the Army recommended that he be court-martialed. The almost terrorist denied the charges and went AWOL from Fort Campbell, Kentucky over the July 4th weekend. After he was arrested, he was held without bond for possession of an unregistered firearm and allegedly planning to attack a restaurant frequented by soldiers from the base. He was convicted in federal court on May 24, 2012, of attempt use of a weapon of mass destruction, attempted murder of federal employees, and weapons charges. He was sentenced on August 10, 2012, to 2 consecutive life terms plus 60 years.
I'd have given him plus 90.
On April 2nd of 2014, a shooting spree was perpetrated at several locations on Fort Hood. 4 people, including the gunman, were killed while 14 additional people were injured, 12 by gunshot wounds. The shooter died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Lauren, I think now would be time to take a quick little break, and we'll be right back. Sergeant First Class Gregory McQueen was part of the U.S. Army Sexual Harassment and Assault Response Prevention, otherwise known as SHARP. Now, this is a unit at Fort Hood. Now, at the same time, he was trying to get a prostitution ring off the ground. According to the dailybeast.com, in an article titled Inside Fort Hood's Prostitution Ring, an Army private who we'll call Jane was divorced, a single mother, and not making ends meet on her Army paycheck. And McQueen offered her the female soldier, quote, easy money. And all she had to do was prostitute herself. No biggie, right?
McQueen then photographed Jane naked and exhibited her assets to higher-ups posted at Fort Hood. On a Sunday night in February 2015, Jane was given instructions by McQueen to meet in room 339 at the La Quinta Inns and Suites right next to Popeyes in Killeen, Texas, at 10 p.m. Jane said a man named Brian, later identified as Master Sergeant Brad Grimes, arrived at the hotel driving a yellow Hummer with Department of Defense decals on the license plate. After 10 to 15 minutes of sex, Jane told investigators she collected $200 and left. When I got home, I felt disgusting, she told Army investigators, but at least I could buy food and diapers for my household. Jane was one of at least 2 subordinate soldiers that McQueen folded into his prostitution ring, according to a lengthy investigation by the U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Command. McQueen reportedly organized Fort Hood sex parties with married women in the military before he decided he wanted to graduate to more blatant pimping. Investigators found text messages McQueen sent to one married woman at Fort Hood to organize a, quote, gangbang. He insisted that no photos be taken because the men were seniors in the military. The U.S. Army's Criminal Investigation Command report concluded that among a barrage of sexploits pinned to McQueen, he was pimping subordinate soldiers and offering them up a la carte fresh for higher-ranking officers who attended his sex parties. The women would be paraded as part of a wink-wink agreement that there would be booze and women for their enjoyment. McQueen reportedly told a recruiter who worked at Fort Hood that he had a female that will do anything you want for $75.
Sergeant First Class Gregory Lynn McQueen Jr. was dishonorably discharged from the Army and sentenced to 2 years in prison. As part of a plea bargain, McQueen admitted to pandering, attempted pandering, conspiracy to elicit a prostitute, failure to obey an order, dereliction of duty, maltreatment, adultery, and prostitution.
Okay, jumping to another dark spectrum of Fort Hood.
Wait a minute. Real quick, before we move on to the next segment, I want to reiterate that Sergeant First Class Gregory McQueen was part of the U.S. Army's Sexual Harassment and Assault Response and Prevention Team.
Yet.
He was. I mean, I just let that sink in for a second.
Oh, I'm with you. I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing exactly what he was not supposed to be doing.
The exact thing that he was like trying to prevent, and that drives me mad. But anyway, let's move on.
Well, let's talk about a gentleman named Staff Sergeant Devin Shute, who was found dead in his pickup truck in January of 2016, 3 days after he had gone missing. Now, his truck was fitted with a hose running from the exhaust pipe to the cabin, and his death was later ruled a suicide by the U.S. Army, but this wasn't a simple suicide. An exclusive interview with The Sun, Tanny Shute, Devin Shute's wife, said she knew something wasn't right when a phone call from her husband, who had ducked out to grab something for the family dinner, ended abruptly. So in other words, they were talking, phone call's done. And his final cause of death was asphyxiation, she told The Sun, citing the investigation report that she says she has viewed. The reason I think this is a cover-up, not just with my husband, but several other soldiers and maybe other civilians, is my husband was stabbed 9 times and had defense wounds. My husband was supposedly stabbed himself before taking his own life. Shute's body was returned to his family, wrapped like a mummy. Now, according to Tanny Shute, the search and the investigation was an absolute shit show.
There was also a man covered in blood discovered in the woods after Devin went missing, but before he was found, the strange man was detained by the warden but released without even leaving his name or contact info. He claimed he was a cattle rancher looking for his cows.
Okay, that's weird.
Suspect? Maybe.
Private Dakota Lee Stump had been assigned to a cavalry troop at Fort Hood for about 3 months when on October 10th, 2016, he went missing during a break from a field training exercise. His cell phone had pinged a tower in his hometown of Indianapolis, Fort Hood Military Police told his mother, and he was declared absent without leave 2 days later. A spokesman for Fort Hood said the soldiers' unit had conducted an exhaustive search for Stump. His body was found nearly a month later, 2 miles from his barracks. His body was mostly intact, but his hyoid bone was missing and never found. A hyoid bone is a small U-shaped solitary bone situated in the midline of the neck. Its anatomical position is just superior to the thyroid cartilage.
So, what?
Yes, his hyoid bone was missing and never found. I know. How or why would this bone be missing?
Stump was going 62 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone, the investigation report said, and had hit a tree on a mound. No skid marks were apparent, nor did anyone hear the crash. Fort Hood announced that Stump had crashed his car while driving under the influence, though a toxicology report proved inconclusive.
On July 11, 2017, 22-year-old specialist Justin Ogden was found dead from a gunshot wound at his home on base. Now, at the time of his death, the Army claimed in a press release that the circumstances surrounding his death were under investigation, and the official cause of death was unknown until 2020. That's 3 years later. This is when the family stated that the Army ruled the cause of death as self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, Fort Hood investigators presented a suicide note as evidence, but according to Ogden's mother, Toni Ogden, the note was not written in her son's handwriting. In a post on the Facebook page, Death on the Home Front, Ogden's mother is quoted as saying, "None of it ever added up. He put his truck in the shop that morning to have a lift kit added. Also, his time of death was around 11 a.m. He was supposed to be at work and had been there that morning, but he wasn't found until 6 p.m. when his girlfriend got home. All I ever got from anyone at Fort Hood were lies and useless condolences. Something is really bad going on at that base, and it needs to be stopped. I have prayed every day since I put my son in the ground that they would be held accountable for the horrific way they are failing our children."
Private Gregory Waddell was last seen on August 19, 2019, driving his 2018 black Kia Rio off post in Killeen. Waddell was due to be honorably discharged from the military the following month and was excited about his future, planning to use his GI Bill to go to trade school and work on wind turbines or oil rigs off the coast of Louisiana. On the night of August 19th, Waddell went out to Club Fugo, located in a desolate strip mall about 10 miles east of Fort Hood. The next day, he failed to show up for duty, and the day after that, he was classified as AWOL, making him one of the 1,000 or so soldiers to go AWOL in any given year. Penny Morales, Waddell's wife, was the last person to talk with the 23-year-old private on August 20th, 2019. His body was found 11 months later, in June 2020, during the search for Specialist Vanessa Guillen. His murder remains unsolved, and there is a $50,000 reward for information on his death.
39 soldiers died or went missing in 2020 at Fort Hood. 13 killed themselves, 5 were murdered, 11 of the deaths remain unresolved.
On May 18th, around 10:30 a.m., the Harker Heights Police Department received a call that a body was on the side of the road near Fuller Lane and Oak Ridge Boulevard in Harker Heights, Texas. Now, Harker Heights is a town about 9 miles from Fort Hood. The body was identified as Private First Class Brandon Rosecrans. He's a 27-year-old Fort Hood soldier. Rosecrans had been shot 4 times. A vehicle fire reported less than 15 minutes after the body was reported was also tied to Rosecrans. The vehicle, an orange 2016 Jeep Renegade, was confirmed to belong to Rosecrans.
2 weeks prior to his death, Rosecrans told a friend he was robbed at gunpoint by 4 people who lived off post. His father said Rosecrans was vulnerable and yearned for friendship. A friend of his had recently died, and the young soldier was having a hard time being away from loved ones. In his desperation for companionship, he fell in with the wrong people, 2 of those people being his eventual killers. In August of 2020, 28-year-old Brandon Olivares was charged with first-degree murder in connection with Rosecrans' death. Olivares' girlfriend, Estrelita Star Falcon, 37, was accused of helping him after the killings. Police believe that Rosecrans was shot while he slept in his Jeep, and he was killed due to an argument with Olivares over the price of a gun he was going to sell.
Now, perhaps the most high-profile death at Fort Hood was in 2020. This was the death of Vanessa Guillen. Now, according to a July 6, 2021 article in Vanity Fair titled, "The Only Thing I Knew How to Do Was Kill People," Inside the Rash of Unexplained Deaths at Fort Hood, written by Mei Zhang.
On Wednesday, April 22, 2020, Guillen reported for duty at Fort Hood. The 20-year-old small arms specialist, then a private first class, was supposed to be off that day, so she showed up in civilian clothes, a black tee, purple leggings, and a fanny pack. That morning, Guillen had left her third-floor barracks and headed downstairs to her workstation at the motor pool, a vast garage for military vehicles. She filled out the paperwork that is the lifeblood of the Army before heading toward the arms room a few paces away. Just before noon, Guillen left her keys, Army ID, and bank cards in one of the arms rooms and entered another adjacent arms room, separated by a hallway. There she encountered Specialist Aaron Robinson, also 20 years old, but a rank above her. Robinson gave Guillen the serial number of a .50 caliber machine gun that needed servicing. Later, Robinson would tell investigators that Guillen completed her task and exited the building. Robinson himself left soon thereafter, he would testify, to spend the night off base with his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar. Vanessa Guillen was never seen alive again.
Now, Vanessa Guillen was born and raised in Houston with 5 siblings. Her mother, Gloria Guillen, said she had an interest in the military since childhood when she would play with her brother's toy pistol. Despite her mother's reservations, she decided to enlist at 18 years old. Now, before Guillen went missing, she had told her family that she was being sexually harassed by an unnamed sergeant at Fort Hood. Now, she also said that complaints by other female soldiers made against the sergeant had been dismissed, so she didn't want to report the matter. Now, Vanessa's sister, Mayra, was the first to raise the alarm. Now, Vanessa texted with her family almost hourly while she was at Fort Hood. She went home most weekends to be with them and her fiancé, Juan Cruz, who lived in Houston where Vanessa grew up. The Guillen family was very tight with mom and dad, Rogelio and Gloria Guillen, and 5 siblings. When Vanessa missed her standing 8 p.m. call to her fiancé, Mayra decided to call the base. Now, Guillen's superior confirmed to Mayra that she was missing. At 9:30 p.m., Mayra, Cruz, Guillen's other sister, Yovanna, and Yovanna's boyfriend set out for Fort Hood. They're headed that way. She's missing. We're headed that way. Now, they arrived at Fort Hood at 3 a.m., but Guillen's staff sergeant told the group to come back in the morning. Now, the next morning, the family was informed that Vanessa's belongings were found in an arms room at her work. But other than that, they had found no trace of Vanessa. Now, the family sprung into action, and Vanessa was officially reported missing on April 23rd, 2020.
The family began posting online and distributing missing people flyers on a base around the city of Killeen. Fort Hood Military Police issue a Be on the Lookout advisory to surrounding law enforcement agencies. Military personnel, along with civilian and military police, began a search.
So now they finally feel like it's time. We should probably start doing something. I mean, come back in the morning. Don't worry about it. She's missing.
The Army proceeded to be very secretive about Vanessa's disappearance, often keeping her family in the dark about what was being done to find her. The family ended up hiring a lawyer, Natalie Kawam, to help them get answers. Vanessa's family relentlessly asked for answers and even met with then-President Donald Trump in their pursuit of uncovering the truth of what happened to Vanessa.
Now, I got just a quick question, Lauren. Maybe you can maybe you can answer this because you were in the military. Is that kind of standard protocol where it's like if something's happened in the military, it's like, we understand your family, but something's happened here. We have to address it, figure it out ourselves, and then we'll inform you? Or, are they pretty much normally just kind of open? So her case is not different, is it?
No, I wouldn't say that it's different. I would say it's pretty standard that they wouldn't release any information to civilians until they had a grip on what the actual situation was. So
they're not they don't want to give away false information. So we're not trying to hold the military accountable for holding this information back.
Right.
Exactly.
At this point.
That's what we're exactly. At this point, that's not what we're trying to do. But keep in mind that there's someone that's missing, and obviously they know that this is an issue.
Right. Let's take a quick break.
Before Vanessa went missing, her family noticed signs that something was wrong with her. Gloria had noticed her losing weight. Another family stated that Vanessa was having trouble sleeping, losing weight, and saying that things weren't what they seemed. That, coupled with Vanessa's earlier confession to her mother that she had been being sexually harassed by a fellow soldier.
Nearly a month after Vanessa vanished, 2 witnesses were interviewed who observed Specialist Aaron Robinson struggling with a tough box outside the armory on the day Vanessa went missing.
A tough box is one of those boxes like in the bed of a pickup truck. They're like a really solid steel box. A lot of the guys use tools. They're like job boxes, things like that.
On May 19th, military investigators went through Robinson's phone and learned that he had called his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, multiple times on the night of April 22nd, as late as 3:30 a.m., from a town 20 miles east of Fort Hood, despite his claim that he had been with Aguilar that night. A month later, on June 19, 2020, Cecily Aguilar was interviewed for the first time. Cell phone data from both Robinson and Aguilar led law enforcement officials to an area near the Leon River. Law enforcement officials located the burned lid of a Pelican transport case, but failed to find a body. On June 30th, at about 1 p.m., contractors working on a fence near the Leon River discovered partial human remains and notified law enforcement.
At about 8:30 p.m., Aguilar was interviewed again and told law enforcement officials that Robinson had killed Vanessa Guillen and she had helped him cover it up. Now, Robinson escaped the custody of an unarmed guard from his unit and fled Fort Hood after hearing the news of the discovery of these remains. He had been detained by his unit at the request of CID agent under the pretense of violating COVID-19 quarantine rules. Great little ploy. Now, in earlier hours of July 1st, Killeen police located and attempted to make contact with Robinson, who produced a handgun and unfortunately killed himself before he could be taken into custody.
According to court documents, Aguilar reportedly told Texas Rangers that Guillen saw photos on Robinson's phone of Aguilar, and Robinson was worried Vanessa would report him for violating the Army's fraternization policies. That was the motive for the murder. Cecily Aguilar was arrested and indicted by a grand jury under charges related to tampering with documents in Vanessa's body at the district court in Waco, Texas. Aguilar pleaded not guilty on all counts.
Her trial was set to begin on January 3rd, 2023, but on November 29th, 2022, she pled guilty to a single count of accessory after the fact and 3 counts of making false statements. As per a criminal complaint, Cecily Aguilar told officers in the aftermath of the slaying, Robinson had placed Vanessa's body in a storage case. Later that night, he allegedly returned to the site of the body in order to dispose of it. Cecily Aguilar confessed to her role in attempting to destroy the evidence, stating that she and Robinson took Guillen's body to an area near the Leon River where they dismembered it and attempted to light it on fire. She then confessed to helping Robinson hide the body parts in 3 different holes. On the same day that Aguilar pled guilty, Mayra Guillen tweeted, "I hate you with all of my heart, Cecily. You have no idea how much you've hurt us, along with all the others involved that the public will know one day. All of your names and faces."
CNN reported that Cecily Aguilar's sentencing date was not set. She may face up to 30 years in prison.
The Guillen family has also filed a $35 million lawsuit against the U.S. government on the basis that the Army supervisors ignored the 20-year-old's harassment accusations, indirectly leading to her death. On July 10th of 2020, Ryan D. McCarthy, the Secretary of the Army, ordered an investigation into Fort Hood's command culture after a year of violent deaths, suicides, and complaint of sexual harassment on the military base. As a result of the report of the investigation's findings, this was released on December 8th of 2020, 14 Army officials at Fort Hood were either fired or suspended, including several high-ranking leaders. The investigation found major flaws at Fort Hood and a command climate that was, quote, permissive of sexual harassment and sexual assault, said by Mr. McCarthy.
Vanessa Guillen's death sparked change within the military when it comes to how sexual harassment and assaults are handled. Vanessa's sister, Mayra, along with their family attorney, Natalie Kawam, spent months meeting with leaders one-on-one demanding these changes. The hashtag #IamVanessaGuillen started trending on social media. There are countless women, going back as far as anyone can remember, who have been sexually harassed and assaulted in the military, only to have it brushed off or swept under the rug. Now these women are speaking up. It became a movement and the government was forced to act. In death, Guillen has become a kind of patron of saints for all those who feel wronged by the U.S. military. On December 14th, 2021, the U.S. Senate voted 86-13 to advance the fiscal year 2022 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, which includes historic reform on how the military investigates and prosecutes sexual assaults and other offenses, including murder, manslaughter, and kidnapping, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. On December 27th of 2021, President Biden signed the National Defense Authorization Act and enacted provisions of the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act. Under the new law, the decision to prosecute sexual assault and sexual harassment will be made outside service members' chain of command, and they will be offered protections against retaliation. So this means this is super important because this means that if there is a complaint of sexual harassment or sexual assault, then their chain of command, meaning the people above them and above them and above them, they have no power to sweep it under the rug. They're going to get an outside agency, whether that be the local police or the Army CID or the Navy NCIS, or an outside agency to investigate and prosecute. And then there's also going to be protections in place to protect the victim against retaliation, because retaliation is also a huge problem when it comes to reporting, whether it be sexual assault, sexual harassment, or even reporting anything. It's a problem.
So it basically takes the power out of the hands of the people that are within that group or that platoon or those ranks or that.
Yes.
I'm not military, so I don't know what they're called, but that little section of people. So now it's not within the group. It goes beyond that. So therefore it can be looked with eyes looking from the outside in.
Right.
Instead of from inside in.
Right. Exactly.
So, because everybody.
And there's no alternative motive for the outside agency.
So this is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
To help, well, Fort Hood, for instance, that's what we're talking about tonight, but also in all other military bases and in any other situations where someone could be wronged in these situations.
Yes. So on January 26th of 2022, President Joe Biden also signed in an executive order that established sexual harassment as a specific offense under the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Unfortunately, this is not the end of the horror stories of Fort Hood.
No, unfortunately, Jay, it is not. On August 18th of 2020, Sergeant Elder Fernandez, 23, disappeared. On May 11th of that year, Fernandez reported to Fort Hood abuse of sexual contact from a staff sergeant, whom he alleged groped him in a supply room. This is according to a redacted military investigation report. Now, Fernandez was transferred to another unit where he was harassed, called to snitch, and several other things that were worse. Now, Fernandez was admitted to the Darnell Army Medical Center located on Fort Hood on August 11th of 2020 in an effort to protect him from any self-harm. Now, just prior to that, Fernandez had been reported AWOL for 3 days and was found living on the streets before being recovered. Now, while at the hospital, Fernandez is said to have indicated to staff that he had recently contemplated stepping in front of a car. Fernandez also told hospital staff that these suicidal thoughts were the result of having been sexually assaulted, alongside the sexual harassment he said came from his unit for having reported it.
6 days after being admitted to the hospital, he was discharged. His discharge paperwork stated that Fernandez denied having any plans or intent to harm or kill himself. Fernandez was last seen walking toward a Bell County interstate on the evening of August 18th. His body was discovered 8 days later by a railroad worker hanging from a tree in Temple, Texas, about 30 miles from the military base. Fernandez's family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the U.S. Army, claiming that upon his discharge from the hospital, he was left to fend for himself on the streets of Killeen, Texas, with no vehicle and nowhere to go. A statement in the claim tells a different story about Fernandez's discharge from the hospital. According to the claim, Fernandez told Army officials, "I would have to kill myself if I have to go back to work." The initial assessment also said the sergeant would benefit from separation from his environment. Court records show Fernandez was ultimately left alone, isolated, and homeless after being discharged to military unit personnel. The same personnel the lawsuit claims that had been bullying Fernandez, leading him to contemplate and ultimately commit suicide. According to 25 ABC, a news network in Central Texas, upon being discharged, Fernandez is reported to have been given a ride by special services to his vehicle. However, after sitting parked for several days, it was unable to start, and it's reported that Fernandez was instead dropped off at a friend's residence. Fernandez was left alone on a stoop without access to the residence or releasing him to the observation of anyone, according to the documents. The claim also said Fernandez was marked AWOL a day after not showing up for an appointment at the medical center. However, the hospital claims non-working phone lines prevented them from being properly notified.
The family is seeking $25 million in damages due to negligent care the Army sergeant allegedly suffered at the Darnell Army Medical Center located on Fort Hood.
Okay, so that brings us to another incident in September of 2020. In September of 2020, Navajo Nation leaders began demanding answers after 2 Native American soldiers stationed at Fort Hood died under suspicious circumstances. Army Specialist Miguel Yazzie, who was 33 years old, died on July 2nd, and Private Carlton Chi, 25, died on September 2nd. They were the 27th and 28th deaths at Fort Hood in 2020. Think about that for a minute. 27th and 28th death in 2020, and that is just in September. Now, Yazzie of Window Rock, Arizona, was hospitalized for a medical condition on the day before he died, while Chi of Pine Hill, New Mexico, collapsed during a training exercise on August 28th and died 5 days later. This was reported by the Navajo Times. Now, Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez told Fox 10 Phoenix that the call for a formal investigation came because they wanted answers. The family members felt like the leadership in Fort Hood Army Base in Fort Hood wasn't giving them the information that they desired, he said. Nez had previously said that the families of the 2 soldiers suspected that foul play might have been involved in their deaths. We spoke with the families of Private Chi and Specialist Yazzie, and they have many concerns and questions related to the inconsistent information and details provided by military officials, Nez said in a statement obtained by the Navajo Times. It is very troubling that while they were all mourning the loss of their loved ones, they are not receiving adequate and timely factual information regarding the time leading up to their deaths. I can understand their pain here.
The same day as Chi's death, Major General John Richardson was treated to a welcome ceremony as he took over the role as base commander. Richardson vowed to reestablish trust between soldiers, Army leaders, and the public after the base had been plagued with suspicious deaths and allegations of harassment. The new commander announced the launch of Operation Phantom Action, a plan to open up conversation and counseling between soldiers and their chain of command on issues such as sexual harassment.
On September 4th, 2021, Corporal Nakilan Quinte Mosley was 24 years old, shot Sergeant Francine Martinez. This is his child's mother. Now, witnesses told police that the 2 soldiers had previously dated and had a child together. This is according to the court documents. Mosley had been served court order for child support for the child he shared with Martinez on August 31st, 4 days before the shooting. After seeing each other inside the nightclub, Mosley followed Martinez outside, and they argued in the parking lot. Now, Martinez left in a red Dodge, and Mosley got into a white Chrysler. He pulled the car alongside her Dodge and fired shots inside at about 1:54 a.m. on Elms Road, just east of Fort Hood Street. This is, again, all according to all the court documents. Martinez was struck in the head with a bullet and driven to Seton Medical Center in Harker Heights. Now, she was then airlifted to Baylor Scott and White Medical Center in Temple. Martinez died in the hospital on the night of September 16th, 12 days after she was shot by Mosley. Although Nakilan Mosley has been charged with murder, he is still awaiting trial.
Specialist Joey Lenz, 32, was found dead in his barracks room on the morning of February 1st, 2022. By all accounts, Lenz was a healthy 32-year-old man. As of this recording, his mother, Margie Taylor, still has not received an adequate explanation on how her son died. She suspects it was due to medication mismanagement on the part of Darnell Army Medical Center. Margie Taylor recalls an incident that happened 11 months before his death. Taylor told the Killeen Daily Herald, "Back in March 2021, I got a call late one afternoon from a medic on base," she said. "He said, we want to do an emergency MRI on Joey. And I said, why? They said he's unconscious and he can't give consent himself. So I said, yes, you can do it, but I want to call back. And I never got that call back. It was almost midnight when I got a hold of an ICU nurse at Darnell. She said they over-medicated him. He went in for an eye infection on base. They gave him 4 medications that are not on his record anymore. But she said he's okay, call in the morning. Between Christmas, when her son visited her in Conroe for the holidays, and his death on February 1st, Taylor was told her son was prescribed 4 different medications: trazodone, cyclobenzaprine, fluoxetine, and propanol, leading her to believe the drug reaction known as serotonin syndrome may have contributed to his death. But Taylor keeps hitting roadblocks as she tries to find answers in who is responsible for the medication mix-up, if that's what it was. This makes no sense. I was the next of kin to get his personal belongings, his final paycheck, and now I'm not next of kin, Taylor told the Killeen Daily Herald. How does that work exactly? I have a right to his medical records. If they weren't hiding anything, why wouldn't I already have something? Honestly, they know. They just want to be able to control the narrative.
Well, feeling she was getting nowhere in her search for answers, Taylor did what a lot of people are doing nowadays. She recently turned to social media network TikTok to get her message out. In less than a month, over 800,000 people have watched her video pleading for justice for her son. And more than 3,500 people have commented, many sharing stories of their own family members' unresolved military deaths. Finally, in a phone call in May of this year, Taylor said she was informed by Fort Hood CID Special Agent in Charge, Maria Thomas, that CID had completed its investigation and that her son had died of, quote, a mixed drug interaction. But Taylor still believes there's actually more to this story.
All right, let's take one more quick break and then we're going to finish this up. Phyllis Campbell, 34, was shot and killed by her boyfriend, Michael Leonard Moore, a Fort Hood soldier, on September 19, 2022. Moore confessed to shooting his girlfriend inside a home at 1109 Wales Drive, the arrest affidavit states. Moore said that he and his girlfriend were having a fight about their relationship when she threatened him with a knife. He told detectives he packed some things, took them to his car, and was going to leave but went back inside. Moore said he got his gun and waited on his bed with a comforter covering the gun. His girlfriend came back in the room with a knife, at which point he shot her. However, detectives said the bullet holes were not found in the wall at the front of the bedroom, but instead were in the wall at the back of the room. Detectives said Moore had gunshot wounds in the abdomen, hip area, chest, and neck. Detectives noticed what was possibly soot and or searing around one or more of the gunshot wounds, the affidavit states. Due to their training and experience, detectives understood this to mean that the firearm that left those wounds would have to be closer to his girlfriend than what Moore was describing to them. Moore did not call emergency services after the shooting, but instead went to a convenience store to buy a drink, then called his mother. As of this recording, Moore remains in the Bell County Jail with a bond set for $1 million.
It blows me away because so many people think they're smarter than these detectives and investigators. That's what they do. So when they walk into a situation, you're not going to find someone that is going to pretty much just talk their way out of it. If you're innocent and nothing happened and you tell the story exactly like it happened, then the evidence should show that. But if you're trying to make a story up, you're not going to make up a story that's going to match the evidence. A detective knows. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It just blows me away that these guys think that they're so much smarter than the rest of the world when it comes to this. Hell, there's some podcasters and listeners that could have figured this out.
I know.
A soldier stationed at Fort Hood was detained on October 2nd, 2022, after investigators determined the soldier might be linked to multiple sexual assaults on the Central Texas Post. According to the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division, investigators said a 29-year-old soldier was detained at the gates of Fort Hood on October 2nd, after being accused of sexually assaulting another soldier. The suspect, now believed to be linked to several other sexual assaults on the post, is in pre-trial confinement. The charges against him include 2 counts of attempted premeditated murder, 2 counts of rape, 1 count of attempted rape, 5 counts of burglary, 5 counts of aggravated assault, 4 counts of kidnapping, and 2 counts of robbery, among other charges, Fort Hood officials said. Investigators have not released the soldier's identity.
For good reason.
Why haven't they? But I mean, why wouldn't they release his identity? Why are they protecting him?
Well, by protecting him and his identity, you help protect the victim. I think because in certain situations in the sexual assault, if someone had seen him with these other people, then they might assume that those are the people that the charges are brought up on. You know what I mean? So, do you think so?
I think
maybe I'm wrong.
I disagree. I think that they should release his identity. I don't see any reason why they would keep it secret.
As long as he's going through the proper course and channels of charges and he's sort of, being brought up in these charges, he's facing all the court stuff and he's facing basically trial, then I can't see any reason why you want to release his identity. I think you're protecting the victims, and you're probably right. I'm probably wrong because that's usually the case. Lauren's usually always right, but Ken's always wrong. But with that being said, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll just have to agree to disagree on that.
Okay. So the tragedies we have discussed in this episode are only a fraction of what's happened at Fort Hood Army Base in Killeen, Texas. No one case is more important than any other. We just don't have time to cover every single one. I think the main question we come to, what we asked in the very beginning, is why. The violence at Fort Hood far outpaces that seen at other military bases. For instance, Fort Bragg in North Carolina has over 50,000 troops, making it larger than Fort Hood, yet it only had 1 homicide in 2020.
Well, some mental health professionals are saying they are reminded of a cluster of violent incidences at Fort Carson in Colorado between 2005 and 2008. During that time, 14 soldiers were involved in a series of unrelated homicides and attempted murders. Following a thorough study, researchers were unable to identify one single factor to explain this anomaly.
In an article in Stars and Stripes titled "Why is Fort Hood the Army's Most Crime-Ridden Post?" discusses the relationship between Fort Hood and the city of Killeen, Texas.
I told you, it's in the name. Kill.
For better or worse, the civilian community leaders outside of Fort Hood wholeheartedly support the base. Gene Shine, a local real estate agent who serves as a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army, said in the wake of Vanessa Guillen's death, "Everyone wants to help. The community is filled with retirees and former service members, many who chose to return to the area." Shine said she finds the negative coverage of Fort Hood disappointing and unrepresentative of the community. She watched as her soldier neighbors deployed to work in combat zones, to quell civil unrest, and to support Americans fighting against the coronavirus pandemic. "We put a lot on our military," she said.
People don't realize that, and you can probably testify to this. Sometimes at these military bases in those communities, that's the economy. The base is the economy. Those soldiers are there. The people don't go beyond that because sometimes the retired soldiers, they have chores within the base and the ranks, and you understand? I know you know.
I know what you mean.
They are the community.
I know.
So I can understand why they would support the base because the economy in that area is supported by the base.
Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy met with Shine and other members of the community as well as soldiers in early August of 2020 to get a better understanding of what exactly is happening at Fort Hood. "We are sitting down with a group of investigators to understand the root causes associated with the violence, felony, violent acts, but better understand why this is happening at this installation," McCarthy told reporters during the visit. Killeen Police Department Chief Charles F. Kimball also met with McCarthy and described the relationship his department has with Fort Hood and the Army as strong. Because the populations are so intertwined, he said the two are more like one community. "Collectively, we know criminals do not concern themselves with city borders, let alone military installation borders. So from time to time, crime spills over from both ways. Kimball said in an emailed response, "The base and the police work collaboratively on cases when they can. Much of the violent crime in the city is caused by people engaging in at-risk behavior such as drugs and prostitution."
Well, Air Force veteran Jennifer Norris believes Fort Hood's current situation has been years in the making. The past decade, Norris, a trained social worker with a master's degree in public policy, has been tracking crimes committed by and against service members and advocating for reform. And she posts her research on her website, Military Justice for All. She first focused her research on several large military bases, but after noticing a trend of Fort Hood deaths, Norris narrowed her efforts to the Texas Post. "I didn't set up to go after Fort Hood at all. It's a compilation of systematic issues," she said. At the end of 2017, Norris used her own money to travel from her home in Maine to Washington to meet with lawmakers. By the time she got home, Norris said she thought everyone had moved on without intending to address the problems. "The other bases are nothing like Fort Hood is right now," she said. "I think the anomaly with Fort Hood is that it's isolated and that it's such an economic powerhouse in the community that it's in everybody's best interest to protect it so they can protect themselves," which is what I mentioned earlier. It is the economy.
So what's wrong with Fort Hood? Is it cursed? Is there evil residing there? Or is it just general bad behavior and toxic environments?
I'd say a compilation of just about everything.
Yeah.
So question, when you go to, now I know you're Navy and this is Army. So, I mean, when you were in the Navy, were you aware of some of the incidences at some of the different bases? Like, in other words, was it like sort of talk amongst people that were enlisted to say, you know, like this base is worse? Did you know that there were bases that were worse than others in your, let's say, Navy? Was there a particular Navy base that you didn't want to go to?
Yeah, there was several.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, bases have reputations.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at. I'm not there yet. So that's what I'm saying, the reputation. So if someone were to enlist in the Army and they're like, "You're going to go to Fort Hood," they'd be like, "Oh shit, I'm going to Fort Hood."
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why I was asking. So, I mean, when you sign up and you join the military, I think that that's kind of common talk or common speak. Like, "Oh man, I'm going there." There's certain bases that people want to go to, certain ones they don't want to go to. It's like cities. I don't want to ever go to Baltimore.
"Oh man, I'm going to Bahrain. Are you kidding me?"
Yeah. Didn't you go to, weren't you in Bahrain?
Yeah. That's why I said that.
Exactly. So I don't know. What do you think, Jay? Do you think sometimes, you know, toxic environments can exist if you get higher populations?
Yeah, I just got out of high school.
Was that a toxic higher environment?
High school was awful.
So, I mean, just picture this. Picture you're at high school. It's similar.
I don't want to.
But I'm saying, picture this. You're in a military base. So let's just picture they are kind of similar in such a way to where you have kids that are freshmen and you have kids that are seniors. So at a military base, it's going to be kind of the same, right? Would you agree, Jay?
No.
In a sense, maybe.
No, I mean, you got seniors, you got freshmen. So people that have been there a longer time?
Maybe like levels, like first year than last year, but high school is like meh. And then military, you like actually have to like listen.
Understand. Okay. Well, I was trying to get her opinion. Trying to get her involved here.
But no, like that one dude, the race car, McQueen, yeah, he just needs to like not be a thing anymore, get canceled.
I think actually he was canceled because you said that as part of a plea bargain, he admitted to pandering, attempted pandering, blah, 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 blah. And he was dishonorably discharged from the Army and sentenced to 2 years in prison. I think that amounts to canceling, right?
I think he canceled
Imagine
him.
what that does to your reputation, though.
Well, yeah, if you're dishonorably discharged from the military, you're basically fucked.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't. We'll have to get into a different episode on that, or maybe actually when we do our Patreon episode, when we do the next off topic, let's discuss that. Let's talk about the dishonorable discharge because we want to kind of get into this episode on that because there's a few more things I want to hit on. But I think we're kind of running long here, which is great because this is like our first chance back, and we've been excited. We took the break. We're refreshed, but yet still a little rusty. It's funny because we take a break, we get rusty, but we're refreshed. Holidays have been great. great time with family and everything. We hope everyone here's had a great time and hope that everyone has a great New Year.
Well, real quick, before we sign off here, I would be remiss if I didn't at least give a little thought to some sort of paranormal going on here. Like I said in the very beginning, Fort Hood was actually built on top of an ancient burial ground. So what I did was reach out to our favorite folklorist and former paranormal investigator, teacher, author, all things in that department.
The big Lebowski?
Chris Balzano.
Yeah, the big Balzano.
And I explained to him that I was researching Fort Hood, this and that. And I said, what do you think? Now I'm going to read the direct quote that he said to me. Places have a spirit. You can believe energy gets trapped there somehow or that its spirit is its own. But there's a personality there. The more that happens at a location, the more that face develops, like a person gaining life experience. The darker a place, the more intense that being becomes. And eventually, just like dynamic people in our lives, it begins to draw people in that feel the same way. Imagine a friend who allows you to do those things you only whisper in your mind. Evil places with dark histories open the door and nurture that deviance.
Damn it, I hate he's so convincing.
I know, right?
Damn it. You know, it's true because, and remember, energy can't be created or destroyed. I say it all the time.
So, I mean, we have to at least consider something along those lines. I would really like to hear from our listeners what their thoughts are. Do you think that this is bad behavior, toxic environment, evil, curse? Let us know what you think.
Yeah, hit us up on the old Twitters or the old... We don't do Snapchat, do we?
No.
No, we don't do Snapchat.
We're too old for that. Well, now that Jay's with us, she's like young and hip. Maybe we can get her to start a Paradise After Dark Snapchat.
We'll have to try to work on convincing her. But hit us up on Facebook for sure.
Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yeah, them Instagrams and them Facebooks. So, sorry, I just showing my age there a little bit. But, so... I mean, it's a very interesting place. It was a great episode, a lot of research, and there's so much more, and it goes so far beyond what we covered today. But maybe we'll hit another episode a little later, because this is definitely a strange place.
Definitely.
So, Lauren, I think that's going to be it for tonight.
Again, if you'd like to support our show, please subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
Check out our websites for links to all of our social media, Patreon, merch store, and more.
Please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on and rate and review us. This really, really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And thank you, everyone, for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Okay, bye.